Company letterhead sat atop a document titled Notification of Restricted Communication Protocol. The first paragraph stated in bold, "Effective immediately. You are prohibited from discussing any company-related matters with employees at any level." The paper vibrated in my hands. I set it down to hide the tremor. "Is this a joke?" I asked. "It's standard procedure when serious allegations are made," Aiden replied, his voice unnaturally even. "The investigation committee determined this was necessary until matters are resolved." What allegations? But I knew. Of course I knew. "I'm not at liberty to discuss that," Aiden gestured to the paper. "Please sign the acknowledgement at the bottom." 3 days earlier, I'd asked too many questions about a discrepancy I'd found while auditing the Asia-Pacific expansion accounts. $60 million that seemed to disappear into nothing. Now they were cutting me off completely. "And if I refuse to sign?" I asked. "Then we'll note your refusal and proceed accordingly." I picked up my pen, my mind racing through options. They thought this paper would silence me. They believed this corporate muzzle would make me disappear quietly. What they didn't know, I'd already made copies of everything, and I'd made a call. I signed my name with a steady hand. "There you go." Aiden took the paper, nodded once, and turned to leave. "Aiden," I called after him. He paused at the door. "Tell Penelope I said hello." His shoulders stiffened, almost imperceptibly. He knew what I meant. Penelope, our chief financial officer, who I'd noticed signing off on those mysterious transfers, who was now trying to bury me in corporate red tape. The door closed behind him. I opened my desk drawer and looked at my phone, the screen showing a message from an unknown number. "Package received. Meeting confirmed. 24 hours. I just needed to last 24 more hours. If you're feeling that twist in your stomach right now, you know something big is coming." Hit like and subscribe to hear how this corporate takedown unfolds. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. My name is Merritt Arlo. Until 3 weeks ago, I was a senior auditor at one of the largest investment firms in the country. Now I'm that whistleblower on the evening news. People often ask if I was scared. That's not quite the right word. When you discover your entire professional life is built on quicksand, fear isn't what you feel. It's more like waking up in a house you've lived in for years and suddenly noticing that all the doors lead to different rooms than they did yesterday. I wasn't always suspicious by nature. Growing up in a small town in Oregon, I trusted people. My parents ran the local hardware store. They taught me that numbers don't lie, even when people do. Balance your books, they said, account for every penny. I carried that lesson through college, through my accounting degree, through 10 years of climbing the corporate ladder. I believed in systems and processes. I believed in the guardrails of corporate governance. Then I found the first discrepancy. It was small, a $300,000 consultancy payment to a company I couldn't trace. In our world, that's practically a rounding error, but something about it nagged at me. The payment had been authorized on a Saturday at 2 a.m. Who approves payments in the middle of the night? I flagged it for my boss, Preston. He thanked me and said he'd look into it. 2 days later, the entry was gone from the system. No correction note, no explanation, just gone, as if it had never existed. That's when I started keeping my own records. For 6 months, I worked as usual during the day. At night, I traced money through our labyrinthine accounting system. I found more weekend approvals, more missing companies, more dead ends. Then I found the pattern. Every major transfer connected to our new Asia-Pacific headquarters had a shadow. Money going out listed for construction, equipment, local permits, all the expected expenses for a major international expansion. But the amounts were inflated, sometimes by as much as 40%. The excess disappeared into a network of entities that existed only on paper. In total, $60 million, siphoned away over 18 months. I compiled everything into a report and requested a meeting with our CEO, Dante. His assistant scheduled me for a 15-minute slot on a Tuesday morning. When I arrived, Preston was there too, along with Penelope from finance. I hadn't expected an audience. "Merritt," Dante gestured for me to sit. "Preston says you have concerns about our APAC accounting." I placed my report on his desk. Not concerns, evidence. Preston's face remained neutral, but his fingers drummed once on his knee. A nervous tick, I'd noticed in budget meetings. "That's a serious word," Dante said, not touching the report. "It's a serious issue." I opened the folder, turned it toward him. $60 million has been diverted from the APAC project through falsified vendor payments. Penelope leaned forward. These are complex international transactions. Perhaps you're misinterpreting standard currency hedging practices. I'm not, I said. I traced the money. It's being laundered through a series of shell entities that all connect back to a holding company called Brightline Ventures. The room went silent. Dante and Penelope exchanged a look I couldn't interpret. May I see that? Preston asked, reaching for the report. I let him take it. He flipped through pages slowly, nodding occasionally as if considering my findings. Then he closed the folder. This is interesting work, Merritt, he said, but I think you're connecting dots that aren't there. International finance is complicated. Fraud isn't complicated, I countered. It's just hidden. Dante sighed. Let's not throw around words like fraud. That's a legal term with serious implications. I know exactly what it means, I said. And so do you. The meeting ended abruptly after that. They kept my report. I returned to my desk knowing I'd just lit a fuse, but unsure how long it would burn. The answer came 3 days later with Aiden and his envelope. What they didn't know then was that I'd expected this move. The night before my meeting with Dante, I'd sent copies of everything to my personal email. I'd also reached out to an old college friend who now worked for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. As I sat at my desk after Aiden left, I knew the clock was ticking. The no-contact order meant I couldn't access the system anymore to gather additional proof. They would be closing ranks, covering tracks, preparing stories. But they had made one critical mistake. They let me keep coming to work. They thought keeping me isolated was safer than firing me outright and risking a wrongful termination lawsuit. They believed that without access to company systems and cut off from colleagues, I was neutralized. What they failed to consider was that I still had my eyes and my memory, and 24 hours until my FBI contact arrived with a warrant. I spent that day watching. Not obviously. I kept my head down, sorted through harmless paperwork, responded to emails about routine matters, but I observed everything. Penelope visited Dante's office 3 times. Preston disappeared for 2 hours after lunch. The IT director, Kit, was summoned upstairs and returned looking pale. Aiden kept glancing at my cubicle when he thought I wouldn't notice. At 3:17 p.m., a team from our data management department arrived on our floor. They set up at an empty desk cluster near the server room. Nobody announced why they were there, but I recognized the pattern from past projects. They were purging data. My stomach tightened. They were erasing the evidence faster than I'd anticipated. I took a bathroom break, locking myself in a stall to text my FBI contact. They're cleaning house? Timeline accelerated? The response came 5 minutes later. Hold position. Warrant processing. First thing tomorrow. Tomorrow might be too late. Back at my desk, I opened a spreadsheet and pretended to work while thinking through options. I needed insurance. Something to preserve crucial evidence until morning. At 4:45 p.m., Preston walked past my desk. He paused, then doubled back. Merritt, he said, voice artificially casual. Working late tonight? Just finishing some reports, I replied. Don't stay too long. Building maintenance is doing electrical work overnight. Systems might be unstable. Translation. Whatever you try to access after hours won't work. I smiled. Thanks for the heads up. After he left, I made a decision. It was risky, but I was out of alternatives. At 5:30 p.m., I packed my bag and headed toward the elevator, along with the first wave of departing employees. But instead of going down to the lobby, I pressed the button for the 14th floor, building operations. The maintenance department was nearly empty. Perfect. I walked confidently to the supply closet, found what I needed, and slipped it into my bag. Then I took the stairs down to the 12th floor, which housed an abandoned expansion project. The company had leased the space, but never finished building it out. I chose a spot behind some construction materials and settled in to wait. 6 hours until midnight. 9 hours until the FBI arrived. My phone buzzed. A text from Preston. Forgot to mention, security doing extra sweeps tonight. New protocol. They were looking for me. They suspected I hadn't really left. Had they seen me on security cameras? Were they tracking my badge access? I turned off my phone to prevent any location tracking. Hours crawled by. I heard security walking through twice, flashlights sweeping, but my hiding spot remained secure. At 11:45 p.m., I made my move. I crept up to the executive floor. Using the maintenance key I'd borrowed, I let myself in. The executive wing used a separate server system, one the data team downstairs couldn't access without authorization. If copies of the incriminating files still existed anywhere, they'd be here. Dante's office was locked, but the key worked there too. I slipped inside and closed the door quietly behind me. His computer required a password, but I wasn't after his machine. I pulled out the emergency backup drive from my bag, the one I'd taken from maintenance. These drives were kept ready, in case of system failure, containing mirror images of critical servers updated daily. The one I held had yesterday's complete data snapshot. I just needed to replace it with today's version, the one that would contain evidence of both the original fraud and today's cover-up attempt. As I moved toward the server cabinet, the office door opened. I had a feeling you might try something like this. Preston stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light. My breath caught. I'm just doing my job. Your job? He stepped inside, closing the door. Your job was to review accounts and flag issues through proper channels, not conduct private investigations. Proper channels? I almost laughed. You buried my report. I evaluated it and found it lacking. That's also my job. He moved closer, noticed the drive in my hand. What's that? Insurance. Something changed in his expression, a flicker of uncertainty. Merritt, you need to understand the bigger picture. The APAC expansion is bringing thousands of jobs to struggling communities. Yes, there are financial complexities, but the greater good— Stop, I cut him off. Don't pretend this is philanthropy. It's theft. It's business, he countered. Every major company operates in gray areas internationally. If we strictly followed every regulation across every jurisdiction, we'd never compete globally. Is that what lets you sleep at night? He sighed, suddenly looking tired. What do you want, Merritt? A promotion? A percentage? Name it. The offer hung between us. For a brief, disorienting moment, I saw the path he was offering. Advancement, wealth, belonging to the inner circle. All I had to do was forget what I knew. I want accountability, I said finally. His expression hardened. Then you'll get nothing. Because by morning, there won't be anything to account for. He reached for the drive in my hand. I stepped back, bumping into Dante's desk. A photo frame fell, glass shattering on the floor. Preston lunged. I ducked away, but he caught my arm. The drive fell from my grasp, skittering across the floor. The office door swung open again. Light flooded in. What's happening here? Penelope stood in the doorway, eyes darting between us. Preston straightened. Our auditor was doing some after-hours exploring. Penelope's gaze found the drive on the floor. Her lips thinned to a line. This is disappointing, Merritt, she said, though not surprising. Security reported your badge never left the building. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling security. This is trespassing at minimum. It's evidence gathering, I corrected her, for the federal investigation that begins tomorrow morning. Her finger paused over the screen. What investigation? The FBI will be here at 9 a.m. with warrants for all financial records related to the APAC project and Brightline Ventures. Preston's face drained of color. You're bluffing. Call security, I suggested. Have me escorted out. File charges. Make a big scene. It'll give the agents plenty to ask about when they arrive. Penelope and Preston exchanged looks. I could almost see the calculations running behind their eyes, weighing risks, considering options, searching for the scenario where they emerged unscathed. Perhaps we're being hasty, Penelope said finally, lowering her phone. I agree, Preston added. Merritt, let's discuss this reasonably. Whatever you think you found, I'm sure we can clarify. The sudden shift to conciliation was almost comical. I found $60 million being siphoned through fake vendors, I said. What's there to clarify? Context, Penelope insisted. You're missing crucial context. Then enlighten me. Preston gestured toward Dante's small conference table. Let's sit. Talk this through. It was a delaying tactic, but I decided to play along. Every minute they spent trying to convince me was a minute they weren't destroying more evidence. We sat. They talked. They spun elaborate explanations about international tax strategies, about competitive necessity, about regulatory arbitrage. Their words flowed like water, plausible, smooth, practiced, and utterly false. As they talked, I noticed something. Penelope kept glancing at her watch. Every few minutes, like clockwork. She was waiting for something, or someone, which is why those transfers might appear irregular to someone without visibility into the full strategy. Preston was saying, You see, Merritt, this is exactly why these matters should be escalated properly. Jumping to conclusions. What time is it, Penelope? I interrupted. She stiffened. What? You've checked your watch 8 times in 20 minutes. Are you expecting something to happen? The conference room door opened before she could answer. Dante walked in, followed by two men I didn't recognize. One carried a laptop bag. Merritt, Dante said, his voice carefully neutral. Working late, I see. We all are, I replied. He nodded to the strangers. These gentlemen are from our data security team. They need to examine your devices and accounts for potential breaches. The trap became clear. They would discover that I had stolen or fabricated data. They would make me the criminal. No, I said simply. It's not a request, Dante replied. It's company policy for suspected data theft. I don't work for you anymore. I stood up. I quit, effective immediately. Preston started to speak, but Dante held up a hand to silence him. That's your right, Dante said, but you still can't leave with company property. I don't have any company property. The backup drive. I glanced at the drive still lying on the floor near the desk. I never touched it. Check your cameras. The man with the laptop stepped forward. We'll need to verify that and examine your personal devices to confirm no data was transferred. You need a warrant for that, I said. Not for company-owned equipment in a company building. My phone and laptop are personal property. That's for legal to determine, Dante said. In the meantime, we have a responsibility to secure our systems. They were stalling, creating a paper trail, building their defense. The realization hit me like cold water. They weren't worried about the FBI anymore. Something had changed. What changed? I asked, studying Dante's expression. An hour ago, these two were panicking about the FBI arriving tomorrow. Now you're all calm and methodical. Why? A small smile flickered across Dante's face. Let's just say we've been in touch with some friends who assure us your concerns will be handled appropriately. The implications settled like lead in my stomach. They had connections, the kind that could derail an investigation before it began. You made a call, I said. Several, Dante replied. It seems your FBI contact isn't as highly placed as you might have hoped. Was he bluffing? I couldn't tell. My contact had been confident about the warrant, but I knew how these things worked. One call from the right person could delay action, reroute priorities, create bureaucratic obstacles. The man with the laptop opened it, fingers flying across the keyboard. I need access to the server cabinet, he told Dante. Of course, Dante produced a key from his pocket. While they were distracted with the cabinet, I weighed my options. If they had indeed managed to block the FBI raid, I needed a new plan. If they were bluffing, I just needed to stall until morning. Either way, I couldn't let them fabricate evidence against me. I want to call my lawyer, I announced. Preston laughed. At 1 a.m.? Yes, right now. That seems reasonable, Dante said, surprising me. Use my office phone. Another trap. They'd record the call, gather intelligence on my legal strategy. I pulled out my personal cell instead. I'll use mine. No outside devices until we've secured the data, the second stranger said, stepping toward me. I stepped back. Don't touch me or my property, Penelope cut in, her voice suddenly conciliatory. Everyone calm down. Merritt, we're not trying to prevent you from calling counsel. We just need to follow protocol for data security. Then I'll step outside to make my call. I'm afraid we can't allow you to leave until this matter is resolved, Dante said. Security protocol. So I'm being detained? Of course not. You're free to leave once we've secured company data. It was a standoff. They couldn't physically force me to comply without creating a much bigger legal problem. But they could prevent me from leaving, claim I was trying to remove company property. A new approach formed in my mind. You know what? You're right, I said. All four of them looked surprised. I am? Dante asked. Yes, data security is important, and I have nothing to hide. I set my phone on the table, careful to press the emergency sauce button as I did. It would silently start recording audio. Go ahead and check. You won't find any company files. The technician picked up my phone. Password? I gave it to him. I had nothing incriminating on the device. I'd been too careful for that. What I did have was now a recording of everything happening in this room. For the next hour, they combed through my phone and personal laptop. As expected, they found nothing. No files, no emails, no messages about the company. Satisfied? I asked when they finally finished. For now, Dante said, but we still need to understand why you were in my office after hours. I told you, I suspected you were erasing evidence of financial crimes. I came to preserve that evidence for the authorities. By breaking into secured areas? The door was unlocked. I lied. They couldn't prove otherwise. I'd put the maintenance key back in my pocket. Preston jumped in, This is getting us nowhere. Merritt, be reasonable. Whatever you think you've found, there's an explanation. We can work this out professionally. I'm listening. We'll form a special audit committee. You can present your concerns formally. We'll bring in independent reviewers. While you continue erasing the evidence, no one is erasing anything, Penelope insisted. I gestured toward the technicians. Then what are they doing? Standard security protocols, Dante said. Nothing more. The conversation circled like this for another hour. They offered compromises, explanations, assurances. I refused to budge. The clock ticked toward morning. At 3:17 a.m., Dante's phone rang. He answered, listened, then hung up without speaking. There's been a development, he said. It seems we have visitors in the lobby. My pulse quickened. The FBI? Already? Local police, he continued, dashing my hope. Someone activated an emergency alert from this room. They're responding to a possible hostage situation. All eyes turned to my phone on the table. The recording app was still running, visible on the screen. You called the police on us? Preston's voice rose in disbelief. I didn't call anyone, I replied truthfully. The SOS feature activated automatically when I felt threatened. Dante's face darkened. You've crossed a line, Merritt. No, you crossed it when you stole $60 million and tried to silence me. He picked up his desk phone. Security, please escort our police visitors to the executive floor. Tell them there's been a misunderstanding. Within minutes, 2 uniformed officers arrived. I recognized immediately they weren't standard patrol officers. Their uniforms were too crisp, their demeanor too polished. Private security, wearing police-like uniforms. Everything all right here? The taller one asked, addressing Dante. Yes, just a workplace misunderstanding, Dante replied smoothly. Miss Arlo accidentally triggered her phone's emergency feature during a late meeting. The security guard looked at me. Is that accurate, ma'am? This was my chance. Real police would have asked to speak with me separately. These men were part of the company's web of influence. No, I said firmly. I'm being detained against my will, after discovering financial crimes. The guards exchanged glances. She's under considerable stress, Penelope explained. We were just trying to follow data security protocols. I understand, the guard said. Perhaps we should continue this conversation downstairs. Excellent idea, I agreed, standing quickly. The guards led us to the elevator. As the doors closed, I noticed Dante typing something on his phone. The guards positioned themselves on either side of me. The elevator descended to the lobby. When the doors opened, I expected to see more security personnel waiting. Instead, 3 men and a woman in suits stood in formation. The woman held up a badge. FBI, nobody move. The shock on Dante's face was worth every tense moment of the night. Agent Tess Harper, the woman introduced herself. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize all financial records related to your Asia-Pacific expansion project. There must be some mistake, Dante began. No mistake, she replied. We've been building this case for months. Your auditor's evidence was just the final piece we needed. Understanding dawned on Dante's face as he turned to me. Months? You weren't the initial source? I smiled for the first time that night. I guess I wasn't the only one who noticed those weekend transfers. The FBI team moved with practiced efficiency, securing the building, isolating key executives, beginning the evidence collection process. I was escorted to a conference room where Agent Harper took my statement. You took a huge risk staying here tonight, she said when we finished. I was afraid they'd destroy everything before you arrived. They tried, she confirmed. But we had inside help. Someone mirrored the servers to an external location weeks ago. Who? She smiled. That's confidential, but they'll be well protected under whistleblower statutes. By sunrise, the truth emerged in fragments. The Asia-Pacific expansion had been legitimate, but Dante and several board members had inflated costs and diverted the excess funds. Penelope had managed the money movement. Preston had buried audit flags. The scheme had tentacles throughout the executive team. And someone else, someone I still didn't know, had been gathering evidence long before I stumbled onto the trail. As morning light streamed through the lobby windows, I watched Preston being escorted to a waiting vehicle, hands cuffed behind his back. Penelope followed a minute later, her composure finally cracking as cameras flashed from news vans across the street. Agent Harper approached, holding my phone and laptop. These are clear. You can take them now. Thank you. We'll need you to testify eventually, she said. And there's paperwork for whistleblower protection. I understand. She hesitated, then added, Someone wants to meet you. They're waiting outside. Curious, I followed her through the lobby doors. A car idled at the curb, tinted windows concealing its occupant. The back door opened as I approached. Inside sat Kit, our IT director, the same Kit who had been summoned upstairs yesterday and returned looking pale. "Get in," Kit said. "We should talk." I slid into the seat beside them, questions forming on my lips. "I've been tracking the money for 14 months, Kit said before I could speak. "Ever since they made me set up the separate server system for executive use only. I knew they were hiding something." "You were the other whistleblower," Kit nodded. "I needed someone with financial expertise to verify what I was seeing. Someone with access and integrity." "So you made sure I was assigned to audit the APAC accounts?" "Yes. And you did exactly what I hoped. You found the pattern." The pieces clicked together. "You were monitoring my searches. You knew what I'd discovered. I had to be sure you weren't part of it before I approached you. Then you went directly to Dante, and things accelerated." "Why didn't you come to me after that?" Kit's expression darkened. "Because I saw what they were planning to do to you. The no-contact order was just the beginning. They were building a case to frame you for the very crimes you discovered." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. "You called the FBI yesterday, not me." "Your friend at the FBI was real," Kit confirmed, "but they diverted her call. The Bureau has been investigating for months through different channels. I just made sure they knew to move immediately." The magnitude of what we'd accomplished washed over me. $60 million recovered. A dozen conspirators facing charges. A corruption scheme exposed. "What happens now?" I asked. Kit handed me a business card. "That's my lawyer. She specializes in whistleblower cases. The company will try to discredit us, but we have the evidence and the truth." Through the windshield, I watched as Dante emerged from the building, flanked by agents. His eyes found our car, narrowed briefly in recognition, then looked away. "They never imagined we'd fight back, did they?" I said. "No," Kit replied. "That was their biggest mistake." If you've ever felt powerless against a system bigger than yourself, remember this. Truth has a way of coming to light. One voice becomes two, becomes many. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice served. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever stood up against corruption? Your story matters too.